Well, precisely. The experience of Ecuador shows that it is possible to have innovative economic policies in order to deploy another type of program, even with the limitations in terms of macroeconomic sovereignty. In the case of Ecuador, we were able to deploy one of the most important stimulus packages without a national currency. With the very important restrictions in terms of the fiscal policy, we were able to create another perspective of the intervention of the state in the economy. From an average of 3-5 points of the GDP of public investment during the previous decades, to the previous 3 decades, in the first year of the new government in 2008, we raised to 14%, and in 2013 we reached 16.6%, when the Latin American average is 7%, 7-8%. That means that most of the impossibilities are ideological ones. There are important technical challenges, of course, but it is possible to deploy a progressive economic policies even under duress. The level of blackmailing that the Syriza government had been faced during the last 5 months had shown us the level of the skillful management of the situation on behalf of the negotiators. But I think that it is important to be much more creative in terms, for example, of the new financial architecture at the domestic level for Greece. For example, if they were able to deploy at this moment the electronic possibilities of money, an electronic currency, like Ecuador is trying to implement now, and to reinforce the possibilities of the grassroots organizations in terms of cooperatives and credit unions, like the network of networks that Ecuador has been working up during the last decade. For sure, this offensive of the European Central Bank and the complicity of the Bank of Greece in order to shrink the possibilities for the people, of the Greek people, to withdraw up to 60 euros each week from the ATMs could be put in another perspective, and the alternatives of liquidity policies on behalf of the government could open the margin of maneuver and possibly put the ultimatum of the last week, the last 2 weeks, in another situation. No, the negotiation could be much more successful if the new instruments of the new financial architecture at the internal level, could be in march, in functioning right now in the case of Greece. But that is at the same time a very important warning for the case of Latin America. Yes, there is of course limitations, but for example, in the case of Ecuador, there where we didn't have a monetary policy, we invented a liquidity policy. There where we didn't have enough degrees of freedom in terms of the fiscal policy, we transformed the treasury and the management of the whole intervention of the state, the articulation of the state within the territories and from the central government with the corporate private capitals, but also with the social and popular economy, which render a very interesting synergy in terms of eradication of poverty, in terms of territorial development, in terms of the promotion of productive forces and the transformation of the productive matrix. There where the international commitments around the WTO and other bilateral arrangements in terms of the neoliberal version of free trade restricted our commercial policy space, we invented a new type of import substitution policies, a selective and a new type of import substitution policies combined with market power control in order to avoid the abuses of the monopolies that this type of policies used to create in past decades. The type of import substitution policies like the CEPAL implemented in Latin America during the 50s and the 60s. No? So again, there is a lot of theoretical ground and operative challenges that we have to face, but it is possible. It is very important right now to promote a debate and to build up theory, to build up new concepts that could help in the emancipation of our minds from the prison of the neoliberal thought. The unique thought had colonized our minds and had restricted our possibilities of hope. But the experience of Latin America, not only of Ecuador, the experiences in Latin America, and I think the very skillful management of the administration during these first months of the Syriza government can show us a lot of venues from which new resources for serving the people are available. This setback provoked by the blackmailing of the Troika against the sovereignty of the Greek people should be put in that perspective as a tactical retreat in order to buy time and in order to prepare the conditions for further conquests. Well, we have to learn from each other. No? What is very clear is that what has been imposed upon the Greek people against the will of the majority of the population expressed in the last referendum, against the will of the Syriza government, is totally unsustainable, is unviable. And the IMF itself is totally aware about this. They had several technical papers from their own revision of their policies in Argentina, for example, or in the Southeast Asia, in which they had been very critical about their own behavior, their own performance, and the recipes that they apply there. But even with respect to the same Greece economic situation, they had evaluated, for example, the measurement of the multiplier, no? And they recognized that they had subestimate the magnitude of the sacrifice for the Greek economy for each euro of cutting of the public expenditure. The idea is that right now the estimates are between 1.5 to $2 euros of economic restriction as a product of one euro cut in the budget, in the fiscal budget. So the effects are totally nocive, totally pernicious against the dynamic of the economy as a whole, but also about the performance of the fiscal situation. Because you are, for each dollar that you cut in terms of expenditure, you are cutting almost the double in terms of the tax base. So the results in terms of fiscal revenue are going to worsen day by day, and that has been the evaluation of the same IMF during the first years. The original cut of the budget had created a reduction of 27% of the GDP. And that is very clear for even orthodox economists. Or, for example, the technical analysis of the sustainability of the debt. Even the IMF had been insisting from the beginning, from the bailout of 2010, they had been insisting on the need to let the banks to fail in order to avoid an unsustainable situation. They insisted from the beginning about the ultimate futility of the colossal injection of 2010 that worsened the situation of indebtedness of the fiscal situation in Greece instead of improving the condition of the financial sector. The real point there was the political economy. The real lenders were the banks, the big banks in Germany and in France, more specifically Deutsche Bank in Germany, Société Générale in France, that they receive every penny that the Troika gave to the, between quotes, the Greek people. The real effect of those loans for the Greek economy or for the Greek people is almost nil. So what is important is that you have trigger a dynamics of indebtedness to pay the debt, in which the tributary, the archaic tributary mechanism had pervaded the whole Greek economy without any construction of productive capabilities, without any openness of new horizons for the situation of the people as entrepreneurs or as workers, and with a very dim perspective in terms of the reinsertion of the financial Greek system to the international financial situation, and more specifically in a sound relationship with the whole process of European integration. That is not a coincidence. That is not a mishappening. That was programmed as a part of the geopolitical dispute that we mentioned at the beginning of the interview among the hegemons in the economy. We are in the middle of a very sharp crisis of hegemony, and usually in the last crisis of hegemony, we ended up with 2 world wars. So we have to be very aware of this situation. This commercial war, this currency war must be read in the framework of this overproduction crisis, and the recipes of the IMF are only trying to offset, to neutralize some competitors in order to open space for the expansion of some fractions of monopoly capital.